The ship was dead. Wu could see that even before he docked his small salvage vessel against its hull. The transport floated in the empty black of space like a corpse in dark water. No lights, no power signatures, no signs of life at all. He had received the salvage contract 3 days ago, a ship abandoned in neutral space. No explanation given. The contract paid well and Wu did not ask questions. In his line of work, questions only brought trouble. He was 34 years old. He had spent the last 8 years working alone in the outer rim sectors, far from Earth and far from the busy trade routes where other humans made their fortunes. He preferred the quiet. He preferred the solitude. After his years in military service, after all the things he had seen, he had learned that being alone was easier than watching others suffer. His ship connected to the vessel with a soft thump. The magnetic clamps locked into place. Wu pulled on his work suit and grabbed his tool bag. He also grabbed his small plasma cutter, just in case. Ships sometimes had security systems that stayed active even after power failure. The airlock opened with a hiss. Cold air rushed out to meet him. The temperature inside the dead ship was far below freezing. Wu turned on his helmet light and stepped inside. The corridor was dark and silent. His boots made soft sounds against the metal floor. Frost covered the walls. He could see his breath forming clouds in front of his face. He walked slowly, carefully. His light moved across empty rooms and abandoned hallways. Everywhere he looked, he saw signs of a hasty departure. Personal items lay scattered on the floor. Storage containers stood open with their contents spilled out. Someone had left in a hurry. Someone had not planned to return. Wu did not understand why they would abandon a ship like this. The vessel was old but still functional. With some repairs, it could fly again. Why would they leave it to drift in space? What had made them run? He checked the cargo bays one by one. Most were empty. A few contained broken equipment and worthless junk. Nothing worth salvaging. Nothing worth the long journey he had made to get here. He was about to give up when he heard the sound. It was soft, so soft that at first he thought he had imagined it, but then he heard it again. A small, weak sound coming from somewhere below. Wu followed the sound. He found a ladder leading down to the lowest cargo hold. The darkness there was complete. His helmet light cut through it like a knife, showing him rows of old crates and rusted containers. The sound came again. It was a whimper, high and thin and full of pain. Wu moved between the crates, following the noise. His heart was beating faster now. He did not know what he would find. He did not know if he wanted to find it. Behind a stack of old storage boxes, hidden in the deepest corner of the hold, he found a cage. It was small, too small for any creature to live in comfortably. Inside the cage, lying in a pile of dirty cloth, was something white and still. For a moment, Wu thought it was dead. Then the white thing moved. A small head lifted from the cloth. 2 pink eyes looked up at him. They were filled with fear and pain and something that looked almost like hope. It was a wolf pup. Wu had seen wolves before. During his military service, he had watched handlers use them as war beasts. They were large and fierce and bred for killing. They had dark fur and yellow eyes and teeth that could tear through armor. This creature was nothing like that. She was tiny. Even for a pup, she was far too small. Her fur was pure white instead of dark. Her eyes were pink instead of yellow. She was so thin that Wu could see every bone beneath her skin. Her ribs showed clearly. Her legs were like sticks. She had been starving for a long time. Wu knelt beside the cage. The pup tried to growl at him, but she was too weak. The sound that came out was barely a whisper. She pressed herself against the back of the cage, shaking with cold and fear. Near the cage, Wu found a data pad. It was covered in frost, but when he wiped it clean, the screen still worked. He read the words written there. The records told him everything. The pup was an albino, a genetic defect. She was also the smallest of her litter, barely half the size of her siblings. By standards, she was worthless, defective, a waste of resources. They did not keep defective creatures. The records showed that she had been marked for disposal, but instead of killing her quickly, they had simply left her behind when they evacuated the ship. They had put her in a cage in the lowest hold and walked away. They had left her to die alone in the cold and the dark. Wu stared at the data pad for a long moment. Then he put it down and looked at the pup again. She was watching him. Her pink eyes followed his every movement. She had stopped trying to growl. She was too tired, too weak, too close to death. He thought about the regulations. War beasts were classified as dangerous weapons. Bringing one onto a human station was illegal. Keeping one as a personal animal was forbidden. If anyone found out, he could lose his salvage license. He could face criminal charges. He could lose everything. Wu thought about all of this for exactly 3 seconds. Then he opened the cage. The pup flinched away from his hands. She tried to snap at him, but she had no strength left. Her teeth clicked together on empty air. Wu ignored her weak struggles. He reached into the cage and lifted her out as gently as he could. She weighed almost nothing. He held her against his chest. She was cold, so terribly cold. He could feel her small heart beating fast beneath her thin skin. She was still alive, but only barely. Without help, she would not survive the night. Wu wrapped her in his jacket. He held her close to share his body heat. The pup stopped struggling. She was too exhausted to fight anymore. She simply lay against him, trembling, her pink eyes half closed. He carried her back through the dark corridors, past the empty rooms and the abandoned belongings, past all the signs of the crew that had left without looking back, without caring what they left behind. At the airlock, Wu paused. He looked down at the small white creature in his arms. She looked up at him with eyes that expected nothing, eyes that had already given up hope. He spoke to her softly. He did not know if she could understand human words. He did not think she could, but he spoke anyway. "You are not going to die here," he said. "Not alone, not in the dark, not like this." The pup blinked at him slowly. She did not understand his words, but maybe she understood his tone. Maybe she understood the warmth of his hands and the steady beat of his heart. She stopped trembling. Wu carried her onto his ship. Behind them, the dead vessel continued its endless drift through the void. He left it there without taking a single piece of salvage. He did not care about the contract anymore. He did not care about the payment. He had found something more valuable than anything the ship could offer. He had found a life worth saving. And he was not going to let it end. The journey to the nearest station would take 3 days. Wu did not know if the pup would survive that long. He laid her down on his bed, still wrapped in his jacket. She was so small that she barely made a shape under the cloth. Her breathing was shallow and fast. Her pink eyes were dull and unfocused. She was dying, and Wu had nothing to save her with. His ship was built for salvage work, not medical emergencies. He had bandages and basic medicines for human injuries. He had emergency food supplies and water filters, but he had nothing designed for alien creatures. He had no idea what wolves needed to eat, what temperature they required, what medicines would help them or hurt them. He searched through every storage container on his ship. He found protein bars and dried meat. He found vitamin supplements meant for humans. He found a small heating unit that he could use to warm her bed. It was not much. It might not be enough. But it was all he had. He mixed some dried meat with water to make a soft paste. He warmed it gently until it was not too hot and not too cold. Then he sat beside the pup and tried to feed her. She would not eat. She turned her head away from the food. She pressed her nose into the jacket and refused to look at him. When he moved his hand closer, she growled. It was a weak sound, barely louder than a whisper, but it was full of warning. Wu did not push her. He set the food down nearby and moved back to give her space. He understood. She did not trust him. She had no reason to trust anyone. The only beings she had ever known were the who had locked her in a cage and left her to die. Why would she believe that this strange creature was any different? Wu sat on the floor across from the bed. He watched her quietly. He did not try to touch her or speak to her. He simply sat there, letting her know that he was not going to hurt her. Hours passed. The pup watched him back. Her pink eyes followed his every movement. When he shifted position, she flinched. When he coughed, she pressed herself deeper into the jacket. She was waiting for him to strike her, waiting for him to show his true nature. But Wu did not move. He stayed where he was, patient and still. Eventually, the pup grew tired. Her eyes began to close. She fought against sleep, afraid to let her guard down, but her body was too weak to stay awake. Slowly, her head sank down. Her breathing grew deeper. She slept. Wu waited until he was sure she was truly asleep. Then he carefully moved the bowl of food closer to her, close enough that she could reach it when she woke. He covered her with another layer of cloth to keep her warm. Then he went to the cockpit to check their course. 3 days. He had 3 days to keep her alive. He spent the night researching everything he could find about wolves. His ship's database had limited information, but it was enough to give him a basic understanding. Wolves were engineered creatures. They had created them thousands of years ago to serve as war beasts. They were bred for aggression, for strength, for loyalty to their handlers. They were trained through dominance and pain. Handlers established control by showing the wolves that resistance meant suffering. Wu read these words with a cold feeling in his stomach. He remembered seeing handlers during his military service. He remembered watching them beat their wolves into submission. He remembered the sounds the animals made, sounds of pain and fear and broken will. He had said nothing then. He had been young and afraid and far from home. He had told himself that it was not his business, that he could not change anything, that looking away was easier than watching. He had been a coward. Wu looked at the sleeping pup. She was so small, so weak, so helpless. They had thrown her away like garbage because she did not meet their standards, because she was not perfect enough to be worth keeping. He made a decision then. He would not train her with pain. He would not force her to submit. He would not become another monster in her life. If she never trusted him, that was fine. If she remained wild and afraid, that was fine too. He would not break her the way they broke their creatures. He would simply be kind, and hope that kindness was enough. When morning came, Wu found that the pup had eaten some of the food. Not much, but some. The bowl was not empty, but it was no longer full. She was watching him when he entered the room, her pink eyes alert and wary. He refilled her water. He made more food paste. He checked the heating unit to make sure she was warm enough. He did all of this slowly, calmly, letting her see that he meant no harm. Then he sat down on the floor again. "Hello," he said softly. "Did you sleep well?" She growled at him. Wu smiled a little. "I know you do not like me. That is okay. You do not have to like me, but I am not going to hurt you, I promise." She did not understand his words. He knew that. But he spoke anyway because the sound of his voice seemed to calm her. Her growling stopped. She watched him with her head tilted slightly to one side. "My name is Wu," he continued. "I am going to take you somewhere safe. There is a doctor there who can help you. You are very sick, but you are going to be okay. I will make sure of it." The pup blinked at him. She was still suspicious, still ready to fight or run, but something in her expression had changed. She was listening. Wu kept talking. He told her about his ship. He told her about the station they were traveling to. He told her about his friend who worked there as a doctor for animals. He talked and talked, filling the silence with soft words. By the end of the second day, the pup had stopped growling at him. She still watched him carefully. She still flinched when he moved too fast, but the constant fear in her eyes had faded slightly. She was beginning to understand that he was not going to hurt her. That night, Wu tried something new. Instead of placing the food near her and backing away, he held the bowl in his hands. He extended it toward her slowly, giving her time to pull back if she wanted to. She stared at the food. She stared at him, her nose twitched. She was hungry, so terribly hungry. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then very slowly, the pup leaned forward. She stretched her thin neck toward the bowl. Her tongue came out and touched the food. She ate from his hands. Wu held perfectly still. He watched her eat with a feeling he could not name. It was warmth and relief and something close to joy. Such a small thing, this moment, such a simple thing. But it meant everything. It meant she was beginning to trust him. On the third day, she let him touch her. It happened in the afternoon. She was lying on the bed, too tired to stay awake. Wu sat beside her, speaking softly as he always did. Without thinking, he reached out and placed his hand on her back. She froze. He felt her body go rigid beneath his palm. Her eyes snapped open, wide with fear. But she did not bite him. She did not run. Wu did not move. He kept his hand where it was, light and gentle. He kept talking in that same soft voice. "It is okay," he said. "You are okay. I will not hurt you. I am here to help." Slowly, very slowly, she relaxed. The tension left her body. Her eyes closed again. She let out a small breath that sounded almost like a sigh. Wu stroked her fur gently. It was matted and dirty and rough beneath his fingers. But it was also warm. She was warm. She was alive. "I think I will call you Snow," he said quietly. "Because your fur is white like snow. Do you like that name?" She did not answer. She was already asleep, his hand still resting on her back. Outside the ship's windows, the lights of Waypoint Station Gamma 7 appeared in the distance. They were almost there. Wu looked at the small, white creature sleeping beside him. He thought about the regulations. He thought about the laws. He thought about all the trouble he was about to bring upon himself. Then he thought about her eyes, the way she had looked at him when he lifted her from that cage, the hope she had not dared to feel. He would find a way to keep her safe, no matter what it cost. Waypoint Station Gamma 7 was a busy place. Thousands of beings passed through its corridors every day. Traders and travelers, workers and wanderers, humans and aliens from a dozen different species. The station hung in space like a small city, full of noise and light and life. Wu hated busy places. He preferred the quiet of deep space, where the only sound was the hum of his ship's engines. But Gamma 7 had something he needed. It was a veterinarian. She had worked on the station for 5 years, treating every kind of alien creature that passed through. She was smart and skilled and kind. She was also one of the few people in the galaxy that Wu trusted. They had known each other since childhood. They had grown up in the same neighborhood on Earth. They had played together as children and stayed friends as adults. When Wu left military service and began his new life as a salvage mechanic, was the only person who did not ask him why. She understood that some things were better left unspoken. Wu docked his ship in the station's private bays. He paid extra for a spot away from the main traffic. He needed privacy for what he was about to do. Snow was awake but weak. She watched him with her pink eyes as he prepared to leave the ship. She could walk now, a little, but she was still too sick to move far on her own. Wu opened his large tool bag and emptied out the tools. "I am sorry," he said to her, "but you need to hide just for a little while. I promise I will let you out soon." He lifted her gently and placed her inside the bag. She was so small that she fit easily. He left the top open a little so she could breathe. She looked up at him from inside the bag, confused but not afraid. "Good girl," he said. "Stay quiet, we are almost safe." He walked through the station's corridors with the bag held carefully against his chest. His heart was beating fast. Every security guard he passed made him want to turn and run, but he kept walking. He kept his face calm and his steps steady. No one stopped him. No one looked twice at the salvage mechanic with the heavy tool bag. His clinic was in the lower levels of the station, away from the busy markets and housing areas. The sign on the door said Animal Medical Center in 3 different languages. Wu pushed the door open and stepped inside. Was alone, working at her computer. She was 29 years old with short black hair and tired eyes. When she saw Wu, her face lit up with surprise and happiness. "Wu, what are you doing here? I thought you were working the outer sectors." "I was," he said, "but something happened. I need your help." Her smile faded when she saw his expression. "What is wrong? Are you hurt?" "No, not me." He set the tool bag on her examination table and opened it wide. Looked inside the bag. Her eyes went wide. Is that a wolf?" "Yes." "You brought a wolf onto the station. Are you insane?" "Probably." He lifted Snow out of the bag and set her on the table. She whimpered softly but did not struggle. She was abandoned on a derelict ship, left to die. I could not just leave her there. Stared at the small white creature on her table. Her professional instincts took over. She moved closer, examining Snow with careful eyes. "She is an albino," said, "and severely undersized. How long has she been like this?" "I do not know. The ship's record said she was marked as defective. They left her behind when they evacuated." Shook her head slowly. "The cruelty of some species never stops surprising me." She put on her examination gloves. "Let me look at her properly. This might take a while." The examination took 2 hours. Ran tests and scans. She took blood samples and checked organ function. She cleaned Snow's fur and treated her wounds. Through it all, Snow lay still on the table, too weak to resist. Wu stayed beside her, his hand resting on her back, speaking softly to keep her calm. When was finished, her face was grim. "It is bad," she said. "Malnutrition, dehydration, parasites, infections. Her growth has been stunted permanently. She will never reach normal size for her species. Her immune system is compromised. She needs intensive care and medication for at least several weeks." Wu felt his heart sink. "Will she live?" Was quiet for a moment, then she nodded slowly. "I think so, if she gets proper treatment, if she stays warm and fed and safe." She looked at him with serious eyes. "But Wu, this will not be cheap. The medications alone will cost thousands, and that is not even counting the legal problems." "What legal problems?" "War beasts are classified as dangerous weapons under station regulations. Keeping one without proper authorization is a serious crime. If the station administrator finds out." As if summoned by her words, the clinic door opened. Park Sung-ho stood in the doorway. He was 45 years old, a tall man with gray hair and a face that rarely smiled. He had been the administrator of Gamma 7 for 10 years. He knew everything that happened on his station, and clearly he knew about Snow. "Doctor," he said calmly, "Mister, would either of you like to explain why there is a creature in this clinic?" Wu stepped in front of the examination table, putting himself between Sung-ho and Snow. "She is not a creature. She is a baby, and she was dying." Sung-ho walked into the clinic slowly. His eyes moved to the small white shape on the table. Snow was watching him with wide pink eyes, trembling slightly. "I received a report from docking security," Sung-ho said. "They flagged your ship when you arrived. Something about unusual biological signatures. I decided to investigate personally." He stopped a few feet from the table. "I know what you are trying to do, mister. I understand the impulse, but I cannot allow you to keep a war beast on my station." "She is not a war beast. Look at her." Wu gestured at Snow. "She weighs less than 5 kilograms. She can barely stand. She is afraid of everything. Does that look like a dangerous weapon to you?" "It does not matter what she looks like. The regulations are clear. Wolves are classified as—" "I know the classifications," Wu interrupted. "I also know that she did nothing wrong. She was born. That is her only crime. She was born different and her own species threw her away because of it. And now you want to throw her away too. Sung Ho's expression did not change, but something flickered in his eyes, something that might have been doubt. Stepped forward. Administrator Park, I have completed a full medical examination. This animal shows no signs of aggression. Her behavior is completely docile. She poses no threat to anyone on the station. Your professional opinion is noted, Doctor, but regulations exist for a reason. If word spreads that we are harboring creatures, it could cause panic. It could damage our relationships with other species. It could bring themselves to our doorstep. Then what do you propose? Wu asked. Kill her, is that what you want? The clinic went silent. Sung Ho looked at Snow for a long moment. She looked back at him with those strange pink eyes, trusting and afraid at the same time. Finally, Sung Ho spoke. I will give you 48 hours, he said. 2 days. In that time you must prove to me that this creature is not dangerous. You must convince me that keeping her will not bring disaster to this station. He turned toward the door. If you cannot do that, she will be confiscated and destroyed according to regulations. I am sorry, but I have thousands of lives to protect. I cannot risk them all for one animal. He walked out of the clinic. The door closed behind him. Wu stood in the silence that followed. His hands were shaking. He looked at Snow, at her thin body and her trusting eyes, and he felt something hard and cold settle in his chest. 48 hours. He had 48 hours to save her life. Again. Put her hand on his shoulder. We will figure this out, she said quietly. We have 2 days, that is enough time. Wu nodded slowly. He did not trust himself to speak. He reached down and stroked Snow's white fur. She pressed her head against his hand, seeking comfort, seeking warmth. She did not understand what was happening. She did not know that her life hung in the balance once more. But Wu knew, and he would not let her down. The first day was the hardest. Wu did not sleep. He spent every hour working to document Snow's behavior. They recorded videos of her eating, sleeping, walking around the clinic. They took notes on how she responded to different stimuli. They tested her reactions to sudden sounds, quick movements, unfamiliar objects. Snow failed to be dangerous in every possible way. When a door slammed nearby, she did not attack. She hid behind Wu's legs, trembling. When approached her with medical instruments, she did not bite. She whimpered and looked to Wu for reassurance. When a delivery worker entered the clinic unexpectedly, she did not growl or threaten. She pressed herself against the wall and made herself as small as possible. She has no predatory instincts at all, said, reviewing her notes. Either they were bred out of her line or she was too young to develop them before she was abandoned. She is not a war beast. She is barely even a wolf. She is more like a traumatized puppy. Wu stroked Snow's fur while she slept on his lap. Will that be enough to convince Sung Ho? I do not know. He is a careful man. He has to be, sighed. We need more than just our word. We need other people to see her. We need them to understand that she is not a threat. The idea came to Wu slowly. What if we let people visit her, let them see for themselves? Looked uncertain. That could be risky. If someone reacts badly, if they spread fear instead of understanding. It could also work in our favor. If enough people see that she is harmless, if enough people speak up for her, Sung Ho will have to listen. They decided to try. Word spread quickly through the station. News traveled fast in a place like Gamma 7, where everyone knew everyone else's business. By the end of the first day, people were coming to the clinic to see the strange white creature that the salvage mechanic had brought from the outer sectors. Some came out of curiosity. Some came out of fear, wanting to see the dangerous beast for themselves. Some came because they had heard the story of how she was found, abandoned and dying, and they wanted to know if it was true. They all left with the same reaction. Snow was not what they expected. She was small and thin and shy. She hid behind Wu whenever strangers came near. She made soft sounds of fear when too many people crowded around her. She was nothing like the fearsome war beasts of legend. She was just a frightened baby animal who wanted to feel safe. The children loved her most. On the second day, a group of children from the station's school came to visit. Their teacher had heard about snow and thought it would be educational for them to see an alien creature up close. Wu was nervous about letting so many young ones near her, but assured him it would be fine. The children gathered around the examination table where Snow lay resting. They whispered to each other, their eyes wide with wonder. One little girl, no more than 6 years old, pushed to the front of the group. "She is so pretty," the girl said. "Can I touch her?" Wu hesitated. "She is very scared of new people. You need to be gentle." The girl nodded seriously. She reached out her small hand and placed it on Snow's head, so softly that it barely made contact. Snow opened her eyes. She looked at the little girl. And then, for the first time since Wu had found her, she did something unexpected. She wagged her tail. It was just a small movement, a tiny flutter of white fur, but it was unmistakable. Snow was happy. She liked this gentle touch from this gentle child. The little girl laughed with delight. "She likes me. Look, she likes me." The other children crowded closer, all wanting to pet the white wolf. Snow did not growl or snap or show any sign of fear. She lay there peacefully, accepting their gentle hands, her tail wagging slowly back and forth. Wu watched with a feeling of warmth spreading through his chest. This was what he had hoped for. This was what he had needed. Snow was not a weapon. She was not a monster. She was just a creature who wanted to be loved. The mood on the station began to change. People who had been afraid started to reconsider. People who had called for Snow's removal began to have second thoughts. More and more visitors came to the clinic, not out of fear, but out of affection. Snow had become something unexpected. She had become popular. But not everyone was convinced. Late on the second day, as the 48-hour deadline approached, Wu received troubling news. A patrol ship had entered the station's space. It was conducting a routine inspection, they said. Nothing unusual, nothing to worry about. But Wu worried anyway. He worried even more when Sung-ho came to the clinic that evening. "The commander wants to meet with me tomorrow," Sung-ho said. His face was troubled. "He says he has heard rumors about a creature on this station. He is demanding to know if it is true." Wu felt cold inside. "What will you tell him?" Sung-ho was quiet for a long moment. He looked at Snow, who was sleeping peacefully in a warm bed that had made for her. The little white wolf twitched in her sleep, chasing dreams that only she could see. "I have watched the videos you made," Sung-ho said finally. "I have spoken with the people who visited her. I have seen the way the children react to her." He shook his head slowly. "She is not dangerous. I know that now. Anyone can see it." "Then you will protect her." "I will try, but you must understand, mister, they are not reasonable about these things. They see their creatures as property. If they learn that we have one of their wolves, they will demand her return. And if we refuse—" He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. The night passed slowly. Wu stayed in the clinic with Snow. He could not sleep. He sat beside her bed and watched her breathe, counting each rise and fall of her thin chest. She was stronger now than when he had found her. Treatments were working. Her fur was cleaner, her eyes were brighter, her movements were steadier. She was healing. But none of that would matter if they took her back. Dawn came gray and cold. Wu stood at the clinic window, watching the shuttle descend toward the station's main docking bay. It was a small craft, sleek and dark, marked with the symbols of the military. Came to stand beside him. "What are you going to do?" "Whatever I have to." "Wu," she touched his arm, "be careful. They do not forgive easily if you make an enemy of them." "I know." He turned to look at Snow, who was awake now and watching him from her bed. "But some things are worth the risk." An hour later, the message came. Commander Orr of the Dominion was coming to the clinic. He wanted to see the creature that humans had taken from his people. He wanted to see the defective animal that they had dared to keep alive. Wu stood in the middle of the clinic and waited. He had made his choice. Whatever came next, he would face it standing. The door opened, and they walked in. Commander Orr was tall and gray-skinned, with eyes like black stones. He wore the dark uniform of the military, decorated with symbols of rank that Wu did not recognize. He moved with the confidence of someone who had never been told no. Two soldiers followed behind him. They carried weapons at their sides but did not draw them. This was supposed to be a diplomatic visit after all. Or stopped in the center of the clinic. His black eyes swept across the room, taking in every detail. They settled on the small white shape in the bed near the wall. "So," he said, his voice was cold and flat, "this is the creature." Snow had seen him the moment he entered. Her reaction was immediate and terrible. She pressed herself against the back of her bed, shaking violently. Her eyes were wide with pure terror. A high, thin sound escaped from her throat, something between a whimper and a scream. She recognized him. Wu stepped between Orr and Snow, blocking the commander's view. "You are scaring her." Orr looked at him with something close to amusement. "I am scaring her. That is interesting. She is a wolf. She should not feel fear. That response alone proves she is defective." He tried to step around Wu. "Move aside, human. I wish to examine my property." Wu did not move. "She is not your property. You abandoned her." "I disposed of a defective unit. That is standard protocol for our breeding programs. What you did with her afterward is irrelevant. She was born of stock. She belongs to the Dominion. She belongs to no one. She is a living creature, not a piece of equipment." Orr's eyes narrowed. "Your species has strange ideas about ownership. Very well, let me be direct." He clasped his hands behind his back. "I am here to reclaim Dominion property. You will hand over the creature immediately. She will be returned to our ship and disposed of properly this time." "Disposed of," Wu repeated. "You mean killed." "It is the same thing. Defective units serve no purpose. They consume resources without providing value. Keeping them alive is inefficient and wasteful." Or gestured dismissively. "I do not expect you to understand. Your species is known for its irrational attachment to useless things." Wu felt anger rising in his chest, hot and sharp. He pushed it down. Getting angry would not help Snow. He needed to stay calm. He needed to think. "You left her to die," he said quietly. "You locked her in a cage and walked away. You left her alone in the dark with no food, no water, no hope. She was a baby, and you threw her away like garbage. As I said, standard protocol. And you do not see anything wrong with that." Or tilted his head slightly. "Why would I? She was defective. Keeping her would have been a waste of resources. Killing her quickly would have been a waste of energy. Leaving her to die naturally was the most efficient solution." Wu stared at him. He had known they were cold. He had known they valued efficiency above all else. But hearing it spoken so casually, so matter-of-factly, still shocked him. "She is not defective," Wu said. "She is different. There is a difference." "Not to us." Or stepped closer. He was taller than Wu by nearly a head. "Enough of this discussion. You will hand over the creature or I will be forced to take action. This is Dominion business. Your station has no authority to interfere." "Actually," said a new voice, "that is not entirely true." Sung Ho walked through the clinic door. He was flanked by several station security officers. Behind them came others, workers and shopkeepers, doctors and engineers, the children from the school with their teacher, standing at the back of the crowd. Half the station, it seemed, had come to the clinic. Sung Ho approached Orr with calm dignity. "Commander, I am Park Sung Ho, administrator of this station. Welcome to Gamma 7. "Administrator," Orr acknowledged him with a small nod. Perhaps you can talk sense into this human. He is harboring Dominion property. About that, Sung-Ho pulled a data pad from his jacket. I have been reviewing the circumstances of this case. The creature in question was found aboard a derelict vessel drifting in neutral space. The vessel showed no signs of active ownership. No distress signals, no crew, no claims of salvage rights from any party. The vessel was, everything aboard was property. The vessel was abandoned. Under interstellar salvage law, abandoned property in neutral space becomes claimable by whoever finds it first. Sung-Ho smiled thinly. Mr. found it first. Therefore, according to human law, the creature is his property now, not yours. Or's face showed the first hint of real emotion. Anger. You cannot seriously be citing human law to the Dominion. I am citing interstellar law, which the Dominion signed and agreed to follow, unless you wish to claim that your government no longer honors its treaties. The silence that followed was heavy and dangerous, or soldiers shifted uncomfortably. The humans in the crowd stood their ground. Finally, Or spoke again. His voice was tight with controlled fury. This is about one defective animal. Why would you risk diplomatic conflict over something so worthless? Wu answered before Sung-Ho could speak. Because she was alone, he said, and afraid, and no one else would help her. Or turned to look at him. That is your reason she was afraid. Yes. You would make enemies of the Dominion, because a defective creature felt fear. Wu met his gaze without flinching. I would make enemies of anyone who abandons helpless creatures to die in the dark. I would stand against anyone who measures worth by usefulness. I would fight anyone who believes that different means disposable. He took a step closer to Or. The soldiers tensed, but Or held up his hand to stop them. You threw her away because she was small, Wu continued. Because she was white instead of dark. Because she did not match your idea of what a wolf should be. You decided she was worthless and you left her to die alone. He glanced back at Snow. She was still trembling, but she was watching him now. Her pink eyes were fixed on his face, trusting him to protect her. But she is not worthless, Wu said. She is alive. She feels fear and pain and hope. She learned to trust me even after everything your people did to her. She is stronger than any war beast you have ever bred because she survived what should have killed her, and she still has room in her heart for love. He turned back to Or. That is why I will not give her to you. That is why everyone here came to stand with me, because we understand something your species never will. And what is that? Wu smiled. That strength is not about power. It is about choosing to be kind when the universe gives you every reason to be cruel. Or stared at him for a long moment. His expression was unreadable. Then, slowly, he shook his head. I do not understand you, he said. I do not understand your species. You waste resources on weakness. You risk conflict for sentiment. You measure value in ways that make no logical sense. I know, Wu said. That is what makes us human. Or was silent. He looked at Snow one more time. He looked at the crowd of humans blocking the door. He looked at his two soldiers, who were clearly outmatched if things turned violent. Finally, he straightened his uniform and stepped back. Keep your defective animal, he said coldly. She is not worth the trouble, but know this, human, the Dominion does not forget, and we do not forgive. He walked to the door. The crowd parted to let him pass. His soldiers followed close behind. At the doorway, Or paused. He looked back at Wu one last time. You will regret this someday, he said. Then he was gone. The tension in the room dissolved like morning fog. People began talking all at once, laughing with relief, patting each other on the back. The children rushed forward to see Snow, calling her name. Wu did not join the celebration. He walked to Snow's bed and knelt beside her. She had stopped trembling. Her pink eyes were calm now, looking up at him with complete trust. It is over, he said softly. You are safe. No one is going to take you away. Snow wagged her tail. She reached up and licked his face. Wu laughed. It was the first time he had laughed in years. Came to stand beside him. So what happens now? He looked at Snow. He looked at the people around him. He looked at the future stretching out before them, uncertain but full of possibility. Now, he said, we go home. Months later, Snow was a different creature. She was still small. She would always be small. But she was healthy now, with a thick white coat and bright pink eyes. She ran through the corridors of Wu's ship, chasing toys and begging for treats. She slept at the foot of his bed every night, curled into a warm white ball. She was happy. The station had adopted her as an unofficial mascot. Children drew pictures of her. Shopkeepers kept treats in their pockets for her visits. Even Sung-ho smiled when she padded into his office. Wu still worked as a salvage mechanic. He still traveled to the outer sectors, searching abandoned ships for valuable finds. But he no longer worked alone. Snow went everywhere with him now. Sometimes late at night, when the ship was quiet and the stars were bright outside the windows, Wu would sit in the cockpit with Snow sleeping beside him. He would think about thee and their breeding programs. He would think about all the defective creatures they had thrown away. He would wonder how many others had died alone in the dark, with no one to save them. He could not save them all. He knew that. The galaxy was too big and he was just one man. But he had saved one. And one was enough. Snow stirred in her sleep. Her tail wagged as she dreamed. Her paws twitched as she chased something only she could see. Wu reached down and stroked her fur. "Good girl," he whispered. Outside the ship, the universe stretched endlessly in every direction, cold and dark and full of wonders. But inside there was warmth. Inside there was love. Inside there was home. And that was all that mattered.